Good evening and welcome to the Greenfield Public Schools School Committee meeting. It's Wednesday, February 9th, 2022, 6 p.m. We're at the John Zahn Community Center, 35 Pleasant Street. And just a reminder, everyone will be required to wear a mask and maintain social distancing. Let's go ahead with a roll call and call to order, please. Secretary Ekstrom.
Here. Here.
Did I say it correctly? It's Deneve? Deneve. Okay, I thought I swallowed it. I wanted to confirm. Anyway. Member Johnson-Masad?
Here.
Chair Ekstrom, I am here. Vice Chair Wall? Here. Chair Porietti?
Here.
Mayor Wendy Goodman is not joining us this evening, I'm told.
That's our understanding, yes. We have a quorum.
Oh, we have a quorum.
Thank you. So we're called to order at 6:01 p.m. First order of business is a good news order of business. We have some Grinspoon Award winners. I'm going to hand it over to the superintendent at this point, please.
Ms. Pat Node and I were So, Mrs. Pat Node and I were extremely excited that we got to surprise both of our Grinspoon winners, and I would like to introduce both of them to you. First is Jenny Horton. She works at AEL, and some of the nomination included that Jenny amazes all those who interact with her daily with her creativity and compassion. She has a willingness to mentor all and carries herself with amazing positivity. She laughs, cries, and celebrates with students and families, always working hard to create a new and engaging activity for her preschool children. They always want to participate and learn when in her classroom. So I will tell you, when we got to her classroom, students were melting colored ice blocks with salt water, and they were very engaged. So I can speak to some creativity. So, I'm sure the committee would want to join us in congratulating Jenny on being one of the Excellence in Teaching Award recipients for Greenfield. And when we left AEL, we got to go and embarrass Mrs. Collins at central office, where her office is. So Shannon is a special education team chair for us, and some of her nomination included that Shannon is tireless in her commitment to communicating effectively with families and students. She works hard to facilitate strong relationships between staff, students, and families. She models effective collaboration and ensures that there's a common understanding among all. Gracefully navigating challenging interactions with integrity and commitment, she puts the needs of students first always. She is a great problem solver, a true professional, and one who exhibits respect and compassion every day. Now, she was in a meeting when we interrupted her, so we didn't get to see her in action, but we hear nothing but positive about Shannon's work with families and staff. So we were thrilled to be able to have her as our second Excellence in Teaching Award recipient. So congratulations. That is the
Thank you both so much.
best part of the job.
Yes, absolutely. It's great to have you here with us as well. Thank you. And just like our public comment people, you're under no obligation to stay and hang out with our fun meeting here. And I'm of the age now, sorry, and it's a relatively new development. I got to put the other glasses on. I'm going to get better at that, and you won't even notice after a while. Okay, we are into the approval of minutes from the January 12th school committee meeting. That was our regular meeting for January. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from January 12th, 2022?
So move.
That was Vice Chair Wall, and a second.
Second by Ekstrom.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. Any abstentions from voting on the minutes? Any no votes? So that passes unanimously. All right. Oh dear, that's going to be a problem. No one saw that happen, I'm sure. Okay. Public comment. So we have a sign up. If you're here for public comment, you did not already sign up with Susan Farber over here. Feel free to do so. Is there anyone here for public comment? Hello. Go ahead, state your name and the town that you live in, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi there, I am Jamie Winnell. Ooh, feedback. And I live in Greenfield. Is that feedback okay? Okay. Yes, Jamie Winnell.
Jamie, thank you.
Yep, teacher Jamie at the Greenfield Middle School. Yeah, so I first want to thank all the educators and superintendent for all of the hard work in this district. I think there's a lot of positive stabilizing that I'm seeing in the school. I'm just bringing some perspective from the middle school and then a couple of comments on things that are on the agenda tonight. So while I feel like there is more stability, there's more staffing, I'm very grateful to see a lot of new staff. We're still needing more support, and having a new staff in a room with many children that have individualized education plans who need one-on-one support, and not having that one-on-one support in the classroom is really challenging. And I adore these students, and I adore my coworkers, and I want them to stay in this district. If you all are voting on a budget tonight, I want you to consider, what does it mean to retain staff, and what could it cost more to keep hiring, to keep losing staff? And one of the things that staff really need is support. So to keep our staff, I really urge you to look at I know that contract negotiating is farther in the future, but I know we're talking about the budget tonight. And I come to you humbly, as I have never been part of a budget process for a school, but I know that our staff really are struggling. And that having sufficient staff and sufficiently trained staff, we really need training for our substitutes. We really need training for our instructional assistants. So keeping all of that in the budgeting. I would love to see a really robust professional development budget. I know that the superintendent is working really hard on district-wide equity and district-wide anti-racism. And there are many, many staff and students who are grateful for that. I noticed the creation of the social justice across the district job, and that seems interesting and exciting, and I'm interested to see what that means and what that work might mean. And I just have one last comment, and I'll share the time tonight, which is, if we're creating a social justice job position, and we're doing all this work with the Collaborative for Educational Services to do listening sessions with staff and students and families, and if the school committee is a body that is reflective of the community, it deeply concerns me that public comment is only limited to 15 minutes. And that's kind of a moot point tonight, because I'm the only one here, unless anyone else wants to chime in. But I urge you to reconsider that 15-minute limit, because especially as we had young people speaking up, it's scary. I'm a full-grown adult, and I'm shaking right now. It's scary to come up here. And so to have teenagers willing to come up here and share is incredibly vulnerable. And we are all adults, and I really ask that we step behind our youth, especially when they come up, and that if there are youth, that 15-minute limit be extended. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? All right, we'll move on. Thank you for that. Okay, we have the report from our student representatives. Brielle, are you by yourself tonight? It looks like you are.
Yeah, Shane's at his trivia night. It's a fundraiser for his grade.
Yes,
so I
that's
told
right.
him that he can stay there and I'll do this.
Thank you for being here. Go ahead.
So to start off with student council, we're organizing our annual Special Olympics polar plunge. We'll be meeting in the north parking lot on Friday, February 18th at 2:30 to plunge with water balloons. So for every $10 you raise, you get one water balloon. And we'll also have some on hand from our Penny Wars in the fall. On March 6th is the SOMA Bocce Tournament at Minnechaug High School. We're currently forming teams and registering for this event. On March 12th is the 45th Massachusetts Student Council Conference. And this year it's a one-day conference at Worcester State. We have submitted our scrapbook, applied for a few awards, and we'll be running a workshop. There will be a keynote speaker and an opportunity to network with leaders from across the state. We have planned several events for mental health awareness. They include mindfulness, a growth mindset binder, art activities, a pound class, and Zumba. Self-care takes many forms, and we are hoping that students will enjoy one or more of these free activities. So Key Club hosted the Save Promise, the See Something, Say Something Week to GMS and GHS, which featured a virtual training offered to all students grades 6 through 12 on February 1st. The Sandy Hook Promise program helps students to recognize when someone might be unsafe to themselves or others and encourage them to act to help them by reaching out to a trusted adult. We'll be presenting more information and positive messaging throughout the spring. So for athletics, it's been a busy month. The ice hockey team is 9-3-2 overall, 6-0-1 in the right division, and they have 4 more games left until tournament. Boys basketball is 6-8 overall, 2-6 in the league with 4 more games left, including one tonight. The girls basketball is 6-8 as well, 4-2 in their league, and they have 3 games left. And the Western Mass tournament starts February 20th, and the Massachusetts State tournament starts February 26th. And the schedule for future games is on Arbiter Live. That's new this year, so go Green Wave. And Library Club just finished a book-to-movie event where students read the book Paper Towns by John Green, then watch the film version and discuss both. They're looking forward to the poetry slam and a visit from author and anti-racism educator Tiffany Joel in April. Sorry, I can't really read. AV Club has just begun in its matinee film series on Thursday afternoons. The club meets in the auditorium and will screen an eclectic mix of movies open to all students. Last week they watched Linda, 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 a Japanese film from 2004 about perseverance featuring an all-girl high school rock and roll band preparing for a talent show. This week, the club will be screening Killer of Sheep, a 1968 independent film directed by Charles Burnett about the life of a slaughterhouse worker struggling to support his family in Watts, California. It's a film heavily influenced by the Italian neo-realist of the 1940s, focusing on the plight of the poor and using non-professional actors. AV Club has also begun planning for this year's film festival, with many more details on the horizon. Spanish Club has begun working on their 26th annual Taste of World Cultures in March. Unfortunately, they decided to have it be virtual again this year, and they're working on ways to celebrate the cultures at GHS through dance, music, fashion, food, and language. We are planning for a premiere on GPS YouTube by the end of March. The link will be shared as we get closer. We also continue plans for our Spain trip in April, which is coming up. Our next fundraising event will be at the Garden Theater. We will be hosting a showing of Uncharted on Wednesday, February 23rd at 9:30. Tickets will be available at the door. The cost is $5, and all proceeds will help pay for the bus to and from the airport. Concessions will also be available, and please come support. French Club had a great time ice skating after
Can I ask a
school.
question?
Yeah,
9:30 a.m. or 9:30 p.m.?
I'm assuming AM.
Okay.
I'm assuming. I'm not.
No.
So French Club had a great time ice skating after school. Our Valentine Candygram fundraiser is in a full swing and is a fabulous success so far. We look forward to working with the Spanish Club in the coming weeks to produce this year's Taste of World Cultures. So now for National Honor Society, we are currently running the concession stands at the basketball games as a volunteer project. And our members are also continuing our year-long peer education work with the 8th graders. We do our best to lead the 8th graders to be better students and citizens despite missing a few of the advisories because of snow and COVID. And we're hoping to have a peer tutoring group in the library after school this semester and continue to plan for peer work with the 5th grade classes, which is, we're still working on that, but we're going to do similar activities with the 8th graders, with the 5th graders as well. And Spectrum is working on planning a Valentine's Day bake sale to raise money for buying club t-shirts to wear in the Franklin County Pride Parade this year. And that is all I have, so thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the school committee? Thank you, Brielle. And tell Shane anytime he needs to skip, it looks like you can handle it just fine. We're okay with that. Oh, Member Naniv, go ahead.
Brielle, I have a question. So when we hear your wonderful list of things that are going on after the meeting, what if we want to engage with that list? Where would we find it? Where is it posted?
So like this list specifically?
Yeah.
I know we have so what we do is we make a document and share it with all the club leaders, like the advisors, and they fill it out themselves, because like I'm not in all of these clubs, so I can't really come up here and be like, this is what we're doing, you know? So we have a document, we could probably share it. I know
Yeah.
that the principal has it, if that.
I'm thinking for the public who might want to participate or have children who want to participate. It's very hard to remember all of these things
Yeah.
that you're saying, and some of them sound so fun. So how would we know as the public?
Yeah, we can definitely work on sharing that.
Awesome.
I'll have to talk to my principal.
Great, thank you.
Well, and just one note, they wouldn't those events may not necessarily be open to the public because they're school events, but yeah, and there is something that comes out in the announcements every week. I get most of that in an email that I get from the high school in the announcements. But thank you for the question, and thank you, Brielle. We'll see you again next month. Yes.
I wasn't able to make it at 6 o'clock. I'm sorry, I did everything I could to get here on time.
Is it just for one person? Go ahead.
Thank you very much. So my name's Wendy Goodman. I live in Greenfield. It's on. How do we go? How's that? Okay. My name's Wendy Goodman. I live on Green River Road in Greenfield. And I am going to read what I wrote. Greetings, and again, thank you all for your service. I want to say that I come before you in the spirit of collaboration and not opposition. Following the last committee meeting, which I continued to watch at home as I was unable to remain in town, I wrote a letter to the committee. While I appreciate getting a response, it was unsatisfactory to me, and so I am called to speak again today, and I really appreciate your giving me the time to do so. Rather than receive and integrate the feedback, the email addressed and disputed point by point an explanation of defense of the proceedings with little or even no acknowledgement of the validity of my point of view, which I knew through post-meeting discussions with other school board committee members and other people in the community was shared. I believe it's imperative that we, as both community and especially as school board members, be listening deeply and openly and valuing diverse points of view, rather than merely defending and supporting our own perspectives and actions. We cannot build a better future if we dismiss rather than integrate diverse points of view. To be referred to the open meeting law in the response I received, with which I'm familiar with the open meeting law, does not answer my concerns that this body's response to the voiced concerns of the community. As members of this school committee, you are an elected body of this community. You are representatives of the community to ensure community involvement in our schools. I maintain that when many voices are raised about an issue, specifically concerning the possibility of having an SRO in our schools, it is beholden to the elected body to acknowledge and respond accordingly. I'm not advocating discourse. I understand and agree that could be problematic, but at least respecting the folks who are concerned enough to show up and speak by having an agenda item so we can know what's being done with our concerns is called for. Open and public acknowledgement of our comments has nothing to do with the open meeting law. Further, while I understand the frustration members might feel by having people leave the room after speaking, it's important to acknowledge the diverse needs in our community. Not everyone can attend in person or stay for the entire meeting. COVID's given us the gift of virtual meetings, which allows for more diverse participation. Inclusion and involvement goes beyond who's in the room, and not to have that acknowledged is distressing, to say the least. To be chastised for leaving does not promote participation. I believe deeply that public shaming is divisive and harming. To defend doing such in the name of transparency is a slippery slope. The response that that member, quote, was sharing why she was voting a certain way for the elected officers and it was a normal course of business, and then to erroneously state by defense the discussion happens in public, like the evaluation of the superintendent, is misleading and inaccurate, as personnel matters are handled in executive session, not in public. To this point, the letter I received was erroneous, and I would hope that modeling effective communication and feedback would be practiced. But this does not seem to be the case, I'm sorry to say. I also want to state here that compliance is not enough. Compliance to laws is the bare minimum requirement. If we don't comply, we fail. Compliance does not create excellence, it does not create cohesion, it does not lend itself to open, honest, and respectful communication. Compliance is a baseline. I am advocating for excellence, for modeling excellent leadership and communication skills, listening, respecting, and validating other viewpoints, even when we don't agree with them. And I hope to this we will evolve. Thank you so much for reopening this and letting me say my piece. I very much appreciate you all.
In the event anyone was keeping track of the time, I totally flaked it and was so drawn into your voice and what you were saying that I didn't set my timer. So if it went longer than 3 minutes, that was totally my mistake. I just wanted to make sure in case someone were upset.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the reports of the administration, starting with our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, ASKP. Go ahead.
Before they skedaddle, I just want to congratulate Jenny and Shannon. It's a pleasure to work with you both. Congratulations. For those of you that follow along with my report, we do start with the curriculum updates, and with regards to the Professional Learning Network, we're involved with DESE on the ELA curriculum. The ELA coaches presented at our last January 26th faculty meeting. I've provided the slides for you. It's been great to get everyone involved and everyone knowing where we are in the process and getting feedback from our teachers in each building. We are just in the investigate and select part of this professional learning network, which is about 6 to 8 weeks. So right now they're researching different curriculums. They're talking to other schools who may use those curriculums. They're trying to do some site visits for those that actually use them in action. But it's been a little tricky with COVID, but we're getting there, and they're very excited to see what's out there and what we can explore. Our math curriculum, we had AVMR come on our professional development day and engage with the middle school in Federal Street on the math instructional practices that they've been using all along. We're excited too that we have a possibility to offer those courses to Newton and Discovery School staff, so we did a survey today to see who's interested in exploring those options as well. I had the pleasure of joining the group at AEL on the Professional Development Day, and we talked about our current preschool curriculum and the ongoing needs that exist in that building as well. We also reviewed the current state of affairs in their lovely library and the need to improve access for early literacy for our youngest, and we'll be reviewing that as time continues. We did have our Professional Development Day on January 28th, where we launched our work with Lourdes Alvarez Ortiz on teaching to strengths. She's engaging from now through the remainder of the year with all of our district staff in all of our buildings on trauma-informed care and trauma-informed instruction. We also have launched a partnership with the Collaborative with the Social Justice and Equity team. We finished up our 3-part series on listening sessions last night. The administrative team will then meet with them, and we will follow up with the team to see what our next steps and our goals are for our continuing work. I included a great article from the Recorder, so thank you for the Greenfield Recorder for highlighting the Beacon Learning Program that we are collaborating with GCC on. I really appreciate the expose that they did and the interviewing of Max Fripp, who's running the program on GCC's side, and the highlight of all of the great work our students are doing involved in that program. Next Tuesday, the district-wide mentors and mentees will all meet at the high school, and we're going to do instructional round viewing of videos and talking about sharing best practices for instruction and student engagement. We'll be watching a series of videos using a rubric, talking about what those teachers did well in those videos and what they could apply to their own classrooms. And mentors will also be bringing their best practices and the tricks that they have learned of the trade for all the years that they've been teaching. We are continuing our library assessments and the ongoing work at Newton. I spoke to Laura Luker and Deb Kern today, and they'll be there again this Saturday, and they're hoping to finish up with Newton by the end of March. And lastly, we had a wonderful Saturday afternoon at the Greenfield Winter Carnival. We had a Title I booth in the rec department that was the entryway to the Mad Scientist. So we were engaged with over 75 families. Students got to pick prizes. We had math flashcards. We had books that they could take home, bookmarks that they could color, math games, reading games that they could play, and really engaged with a lot of our families from town. It was a wonderful day. I thank Christy Moore for accommodating us at the rec department and allowing us to be part of that celebration. Thank you.
Thank you, ASKP. Do we have any questions from the school committee for Assistant Superintendent Patnode?
Just a note for folks watching from home, ELA is English Language Arts, right? Okay, just on acronym alert.
Any other questions or comments? Member Martini, go ahead.
I wonder, when you're discussing the ELA curricula under consideration, when will information be shared with parents about what curricula are being considered?
It should be about at the end of these 8 weeks, because right now we're just researching. So when we get to a final, DESE's guidance is you get to a final 2 to 4, and then really do some intensive work based upon the priorities and parameters that we've outlined. And that will be when we go to school councils for each elementary school and the middle school. So we'll make sure that we advertise for parents to join those meetings, because that's how we did the literacy vision work as well.
And so does that mean when you have your final 2 to 4, that that's when that information will be put out to parents? And is that going to be before you make your final determination?
Well, they'll be part of the process of discussion as a stakeholder, but ultimately it'll be a district decision.
And is there any other means other than the school councils that information will be shared with parents, if there are parents who aren't able to participate in those meetings for some reason?
We can certainly discuss ways moving forward.
Great.
Any other questions, comments from the school committee?
I have a couple of more. In regards to the trauma-informed practices services being provided by Ms. Alvarez Ortiz, You said that she's collaborating ongoing with staff, and I wonder how exactly is she collaborating with them? Is that in person? Is that virtual? Is that in class or outside of class? Or when a member of the staff expresses to a certain person that they need her assistance, how exactly is that working?
Member Martini, I don't mean to interrupt, but I do want to remind you that our focus is strictly at the higher level. Those lower level things and the way that things are administered are things that are left to the superintendent and the assistant superintendent. And so if you have questions, I certainly encourage you to ask them, but I wouldn't do it necessarily at this forum because that isn't our focus.
Okay, and I wonder how many staff are participating in the mentoring program that you mentioned?
We have 18 mentors, and we currently have 33 mentees.
Thank you.
Oops, sorry. Any other questions or comments from school committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you. And we'll move on to the next item, which is the report from the superintendent.
Thank you. First, we'll highlight that we are beginning the process of kindergarten and preschool registration. So I've included some information that will also be on our website and also be put in ads in the Greenfield Recorder about a preschool open house, which is coming up February 15th, and then registration will follow. And then our kindergarten registration will begin on March 3rd. And right now, we are identifying some evenings that will be made available. So as soon as the evenings are finalized, that will be included on the website in the recorder. Certainly, I will continue to put it out. We'll share it in building level newsletters in case people have younger siblings. You know, our students have younger siblings. So it has been noted that we might be able to advertise more than we might have prior to the pandemic, just to really blanket the community with the information. So we're going to try to do that. One of the biggest pieces is that we are really trying to encourage people with kindergarten age students to register early in March, because we have a kindergarten screening day on the school calendar for April 15th. Yes, it's April 15th. I'll need your glasses. And it's really helpful and important information if our kindergarten teachers are able to screen as many of our incoming kindergartners as possible. It helps them to match classes based on students' needs and their current skills. So it's really important. It also helps us at the district level to monitor class size and distribution. So we're really encouraging early registration. So there is a registration link on our website, or people can call central office and we'll connect them with our registrar. Capital projects, we haven't highlighted much in terms of what's happening with our facilities, but a lot is happening with our facilities, not the least of which I think anyone who's been in has seen how clean and well kept that they are, which I'm very proud of. And I know even when Mr. Morrison first came and began his tenure with us, that was one of the first comments he made, was how clean and well-kept the high school was. But Mr. Heavey, along with our maintenance and facility staff, has been getting a lot of work done. We've had some door replacements that were done. These are all capital projects that had been funded prior and now are being implemented. We're down to the punch list for the door completions. We are beginning the quote process for some flooring replacement. And we are working on the water bottle filling stations, the ones that fill refillable water bottles that do not have bubblers. Most of the buildings are not complicated to do that, but the middle school has some structural complications that makes it not so much a pop out of one unit and pop in of the other. So he continues to work on that, and along with the regular wear and tear that they're taking care of for us. And we've also purchased and Eric is being trained on a new ticket system. So people who need custodial or maintenance work done can enter a ticket onto the online system. But having a maintenance system in this way, it's connected with central maintenance for the city. So it allows Eric to communicate and then the city staff to communicate more easily back and forth about tickets that are outstanding for facilities work. So I think that will be very helpful. So ongoing work, I know that the committee had asked that I work with the police department to outline some potential options for collaboration between the police department and the schools. And, you know, I've been able to meet with the chief and with Sergeant Green a number of times. And at this point, the police department is not able to allocate staff to additional school support unless the school supports the position financially. So we're going to continue, of course, to get emergency response and the typical services that our police department would provide. But at this point, I think we're at a point where you know, decisions will need to be made outside of that. Just they don't have the staffing available. So, but I do appreciate that they've been very willing to have those conversations, and it's been a positive beginning, I think, to the discussions. Trooper Carmichael from the Mass State Police, who works with the Greenfield schools on safety and security, is visiting all the schools with Karen and I tomorrow, and the principals and facilities director, to answer individual questions. We had building level trainings to remind all of our staff and train our new staff about shelter in place and lockdown procedures. Those are typical security protocols that have been used for a number of years. They were used here prior to the closure in March of 20, so we are refreshing everyone's knowledge of those. And then after he goes to the building's response to individual teacher questions, then we'll start doing planned announced drills in the schools again, as we had done prior to March of 20. So in terms of moving forward with the enrollment projections, I am now an affiliate of NESDEC, so that allows us to have some enrollment projections done. We have provided some initial data, which is included in your packet for reference. And then I have also talked with them about the potential to work with us about, I'm calling it facilities use, but a number of questions have come up since I've been here in Greenfield about facility use. Some comments during the beginning of the year from staff and families about could we get 5th grade back to the elementary level. Also questions about the use of Green River. Does the school department need it? What would it be for? And then finally, concerns about equity in the way our elementary schools are configured or resources are distributed. So this, to me, feels like a good, reasonable next step to have someone provide options. But right now, I've just asked if they could put together what that might look like, and I will bring it to the committee for consideration. And then I'm sure everyone is aware, it's hot off the press, that today Commissioner Riley announced that he will not continue the DESE-generated mask mandate for schools after February 28th. So I have reached out to Jennifer Hoffman and Meg Tudrin at DPH, and Kelly Savitri and I will meet with them to talk about variations of options to address mitigation, masking, just what is possible, what DESE might be recommending, DPH at that stage, and then I will bring all of those options to you folks for consideration in light of the fact that the school committee still has a mask policy in place. Greenfield will continue, but I do believe, based on what we're already seeing, that DESE will start recommending some reduction in the mitigation strategies. One of the things that has some indication of that is one of the potential structures for testing that Kelly Savitri and I had opted to not move to for some logistical reasons was that there is the option for students or teachers to have home tests provided, but what that does is eliminate test and stay and contact tracing. And based on the numbers that we had at the time and just the logistics of getting parents and staff opted in and distribution, she felt at that stage it was not a great idea to opt in at that point. We can opt in any point through April 22nd, but I think it's going to be best case for us to meet with the DPH folks and get some options and then come talk about what all of those could look like. So the 23 budget, we are wrapping up the final edits. It's going to be published in the recorder, as required, and then once that is done, we'll have copies of each cost center's budget available online, and then if anyone needs or would like a paper copy, they can request it from central office. And a budget subcommittee meeting is scheduled for Monday, and I know you folks are aware that even though we publish and it is still the superintendent's budget, things continue to change. So that was the snapshot in time, and I'll do my best to keep you updated on anything that has changed from one iteration to the next. Chris Pratt, our associate principal at the middle school, has given us his resignation, so I want to thank Chris for all of his hard work and wish him well. And that posting is up already, and we have already received some applicants, so I will keep you updated on that. And then volunteers, I had updated the protocols and we had put it on the website, but we really were not requesting a lot of volunteers because our COVID numbers had escalated after break. But we're happy to have people apply if they, to come into Central or access the process online and come in. We're looking for volunteers, a lot of support for lunchtime, recess, Greenfield High School Library. So if anyone is interested, please contact Lauren in my office and they can start the process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How about questions or comments from the school committee? Member Johnson-Rousseau, go ahead.
A couple questions about the COVID stuff. I think I just did not follow the piece about the opt-in or opt-out and the contact tracing. Can you just review that piece again, please?
Yes, I can. So one of the changes that DESE had proposed was that instead of districts doing contact tracing and test and stay, what we could do is eliminate those pieces and engage in a process where we would get at-home test kits, but parents or staff who wanted to participate in that would have to opt in. So they'd have to complete a process to opt in, and then we'd have to get the kits, sort them out, distribute them. And at that point, based on the amount of time it was taking for the contact tracing and the test and stay and the results that we were getting, we were identifying some students and staff who were positive through that process. So the balancing of the time needed from our nursing staff, they didn't feel that it was really a time saver to change to the new process. And because we were still identifying a number of positives through the test and stay and contact tracing, the nurses felt it was a better choice at that point to stay with our process.
Yeah.
So we have, but that doesn't mean we can't move to the home test process anytime through April 22nd. DESE leaves that option open. So we'll keep having that conversation. I will be more involved directly with our nursing staff since Mrs. Savitri is leaving us. So I'll be able to hear directly from our nursing staff, but that's positive. We're certainly going to miss Kelly's presence, and her work has been incredible. But, we'll be able to keep monitoring our situation, and I think after we meet with DPH and, we might have some better context to think about those decisions.
And when you say DPH, I know Jennifer is here in Greenfield. Are they both Greenfield?
Yes,
Because when I
yep.
hear DPH, I always think Massachusetts Department of Public Health. or something.
Greenfield,
Okay.
Board of Health, not Board of Health, Department of Public Health.
Okay,
Meg Tudrin is the nurse
yeah,
for
okay.
them, and so the four of us will meet to just gather some ideas about how we could potentially scale back in a reasonable way,
Yeah.
or not, depending on what you folks want to do.
And do you think, I feel like I have never really had an update or a briefing on COVID and spread in schools. I feel like I'm hearing on podcasts and so on that the risk of spread in schools is much lower than we originally thought. But I wonder if we could have someone come and kind of make a presentation to us, because it sounds like we're going to have to be voting on masks in the near future, and for us to have
Possible.
shared information about that, I think would be very useful.
I can find that. What I can tell you is that DESE representatives consistently share data from the state level, which I'm happy to find, that evidence of school spread is lower than what is seen in communities and certainly within school settings, even though I realize at times we have challenges keeping all of our students masked with noses and mouths and everything covered. We still are able to utilize many more mitigation strategies in a school setting in a controlled way than people are in public. So yes, that is consistently shared, that it's less spread in school. But I will pull information and I will see, maybe Jennifer or Meg would be able to come talk to you. But I'll see what we can get
Thank you, I
for
appreciate that.
information. Yeah?
Wonderful. Great report. I appreciate it. All the work you're doing.
Other questions from the Vice Chair Ekstrom? Go ahead.
Secretary.
Secretary
All
Ekstrom.
good, just want to make sure. So I'll ask a question that I'm sure you don't want to answer, but I'm sure that other people are thinking about, and I think I already know the answer. But given the masks mandate going away, and some of that is being related to people being vaccinated, do you think that there's a possibility that would continue with elementary because that age group isn't primarily vaccinated? Just in your professional opinion. I'm not saying predict anything.
Can you rephrase the question?
Yeah, so when mask mandate goes away, and if we all agree that yes, we want to, or no, we don't, would it be conceivable that it would still be required or smart to do for elementary school as opposed to other grades?
Masking?
Yes.
The decision for masking at all after February 28th is being left up to local
Okay,
districts.
All right.
So that would be something
Whatever
that
it
you
is.
folks could
Okay.
consider.
okay.
They definitely, in the presentation, they definitely did encourage that any district, regardless, if the decision is not to continue with a mask mandate,
Okay.
they encourage that all districts create an environment where people who choose to mask feel safe in doing that, and that it's a acceptable and, respected choice.
Yeah.
So I think, at minimum, that is something we'll be planning for,
Yeah.
is ways to message around that,
Okay.
but in anticipation of a committee decision. So, but I'll pull some information. I will see what information Kelly has around our vaccination percentages, which have not been near the 80%, but I'll get an update for the next meeting and get you folks as much info as we've got.
Thank you. I was curious about your professional opinion, that's,
Yeah,
yeah. All right, thank you.
sure.
Other questions? Member Martini, go ahead.
I might be wrong, but I seem to recall Mr. Pratt also had the role of the stipend position that was created back in the fall to coordinate restorative practices in the district. And so I was just wondering, is that also being posted separately, or how is that being handled, given that he's leaving?
I am planning to convene the members that applied for the social emotional learning curriculum writing to see what the status of things is, to get the lay of the land, and then make a decision from there, whether I'll repost or whether one of the administrators will continue that work.
Great, thanks.
Other questions or comments? All right. I was trying to think if I have one. I don't. No, okay. I think I'm good. Okay. So we're on to the school committee reports. First is the report of the chair, which I generally do not have a report, and I do not have one this evening. I looked at the agenda and thought, no, I'm not going to talk any more than I have to. How about subcommittees? I know we did have a budget subcommittee meeting since our last regular meeting. I think that was the only subcommittee that met. Do we have an update from budget? Do you want to roll it into the budget update, or?
Nobody cares?
Well, it's the
I'm looking
next
at Ann
thing
and
anyway.
Christine, because.
It's the next thing anyway,
Okay,
so.
so we'll go together.
There you go.
We clearly talked about what the budget was looking like for 2023, and also, and it, totally my fault, there was probably a heavier education piece to it than the superintendent and Andy were interested in, because I wanted to make sure that both Kate and Glenn were comfortable with the information they were receiving. And it was really refreshing for me to see how much more clear it was versus in previous years. We've spent so much time sort of cleaning up what all the line items look like and how they coordinate and all those things, which sounds goofy to anyone except me. Now that those are all coordinated, at least for me, it's much easier to see the larger picture as opposed to trying to dig around to find information. And we did touch upon a little bit about how things are designated within the budget, going towards line items, and part of that was all of the, the social justice, emotional pieces and where those show up in the budget. And Christine did such a great job explaining that, and I know that we've gotten a lot of questions about that I was hoping that you could explain that again for everyone on the committee so that they're all clear, but I also think there's questions in the public about how that shows up.
So the social emotional work and the restorative practice work, and honestly, the work around equity is reflected in a variety of line items. It's not a program, it's not a finite purchase that we are making, so it's not in a supply line as such. So we have staff that are allocated to that work. We have substantial amount of professional development that is related to all of those topics. It was just a reference to the stipend, which would be in yet a different line in the budget. So the efforts related to all of those, all the social emotional learning, the equity, and race work that we are doing is really spread out into a variety of different places in the budget. So when I do my FY23 superintendent's budget presentation, I certainly intend to speak to all of the pieces that are represented in the proposed budget related to all of that, as well as all of the academic work that we need to do, the curriculum work, the facilities, so all of the pieces of the budget. And all of those are reflected in very similar ways, where they are spread out amongst a variety of budget lines.
And that's standard practice with municipal financing. When we're looking at a budget, we look at the larger macro level as opposed to the micro level, and what kind of PD, what's the title of this PD, and what is it that you're doing, and what's the name of this thing that you've gotten. That's pretty standard practice at this level, school committee and things like that.
Yes, so the contracted services line represents a variety of things, one of which is professional development, and that can be from a variety of vendors, but it's condensed into the appropriate budget line, which would be contracted services. Okay. And I'm certain, Mr. Paquette can certainly speak more in depth to that piece.
On to you guys. Unless there was something I missed that either of you would like to include? No?
No, I think that was great, and I think it would be really helpful for the different pieces that are related to restorative practices in the district to kind of be pulled together and distilled in the report that you have coming. I know I've gotten numerous emails from constituents just having an interest in this particular issue, so I think it would be really helpful to be able to pull that together for them and provide that information. So thank you for doing that.
So it sounds like we can move right into the budget update. Please, Mr. Paquette, nice to have you with us.
It's great to be here. As I know, it's great to be here. No, anyway, so in your package, you have the February update. As if you remember from previous updates we've provided, where we've said that, we have things charged and now we're going to start moving things to our other funding sources. That process has begun. If you look and see in particular like circuit breaker and revolving accounts, you'll see that we've actually moved expenditures from the local budget to the circuit breaker. And we are going to continue to start doing that as we begin closing out the fiscal year. So you'll start to see in the general fund that quote unquote, I always say in quotes, deficit, that number is reducing. And then when you look at the revolving funds that we have available to us, there's clearly enough money to quote unquote cover that, which is the intent of those revolving funds in the first place. I do want to share, and we talked about this briefly in the Budget Finance Subcommittee, but also it kind of, I want to say, a sneak preview of some of the components regarding FY23 budget development. With the negotiations that have completed and the retroactive pays that have occurred, I just wanted to share with you the total dollar amount that impact has had as far as the retroactive. The total retroactive amount for the contracts that have been settled was $648,000, which we had available to us, which again, from previous iterations on the city's government, they had a contract stabilization fund that didn't exist. So we had the funds available to take care of those retroactive pays. What that means going forward, obviously, is that those funds aren't available for us now. So as we're going through our FY23 budget development, you will see the impact of those funds, or even a portion of those funds, not being available to us, and the compounding fact that that has on budget development for FY23. So I just wanted to share that figure with you, just so when you look at it, we want to try and stave away from, sometimes we've seen, the cliche of the sticker shock, when you see a % increase looking like what it is. There's a very legitimate reason for it. So just wanted to share that, but I can answer any questions that you might have regarding the reports that were included or anything budget related.
Any budget questions for Mr. Paquette or the Budget Subcommittee? Yes.
I actually have a question.
Secretary
So,
Oxford, go
Andy,
ahead.
as you're traveling around the state, are you seeing similar patterns with all of the school districts and how they're doing their, not how they're doing their budgeting, but in how they're thinking about budgeting looking forward?
So what we're seeing more than anything now is especially in what the governor's budget that was just released, the impact of the Student Opportunities Act funding and where that is going to go as far as communities receiving it. Admittedly, due to the components of the SOA, the Student Activity Act, not the acronym, alert. There's, Greenfield got a substantial amount of Student Opportunity Act funding. So what's going to end up having to happen with that is that plans are going to have to be written as to how it is that the school intends to use those funds to address the components of the Student Opportunity Act. So that's a process that is, I want to say, it's almost a dual approach to, as we are building what we've currently built as far as the superintendent's budget, having that in consideration regarding how is it that the current proposal, once it's in its final form, would use the Student Opportunities Act funding that is expected to come to the school district through the Chapter 70.
And that funding, I don't want to interrupt, but I'm going to interrupt. So that funding can be used for things that directly affect student learning and things like that. For example, we couldn't use it to pay health insurance or put money to pensions.
Not necessarily. There, when you look at the devil being in the details, I'll say that is a discussion maybe more appropriate for Budget Finance Subcommittee once we start to get to some of that level of things. But I will say, when you look at the fact that it is coming, the SOA funding comes through the Chapter 70, it clearly means that it is directly intended for education expenditures, as they say, that meet net school spending. SOA funding could not be used for vocational tuition. It couldn't be used for anything that, debt or school debt or interest or capital payments on anything. It has to be for direct educational services that meet the net school spending requirement. So,
Other questions on the budget?
Can I ask?
Yes, please.
Would you like to add that to the budget subcommittee agenda? Discussion of the SOA?
Sorry, I'm bleeding. Yes.
Okay. I guess since no one else has a question, my favorite topic, budget. I feel like, Andy, what I kind of heard you saying is it would be helpful to have some understanding of the city's plans and process for the contract stabilization funds that used to exist and seem to not be there currently.
So I guess what it is that I just remember from, as those of you that don't know, this is TMS's third go-round in the district. The two previous times that we were here, and I tip my hat to the city because, believe it or not, our other clients don't have anything or didn't have anything comparable to. The city had what they called was a contract stabilization fund, where it was funded through the budget process of the city that went towards negotiation processes citywide, including the school, DPW, police, fire, et cetera. I believe the previous mayor eliminated that funding in the city budget. And then when I look at it, just to double check, I went and read through the mayor's FY21 budget narrative. The expectation was that raises would have been factored in, or anticipated raises factored into each respective department. So I did not believe in 21 or even 22 that the contract stabilization fund was funded and that any potential anticipated raises had to be factored into each respective department's budget. Also a very, reasonable methodology. The contract stabilization funding concept, I liked, quite honestly, because it was there for, in a sense, I want to say community-based, if you will, in a sense that it was there for the city as a whole, including the school, because we are technically a city department. So that's why. So if there was, I'm not sure, and I know the mayor's not here, but if there is any discussion or flavor for appetite for restoring that, or if, and stuff, it's just knowing that we are still continuing negotiations, as I'm sure other city departments are, that impact, and that would have an impact, quite honestly, on things like the SOA funding. If we are, currently going through our budget development process, raises because they're salary related to staffing would be an allowable expense for SOA funding to be used because that meets the concept of net school spending.
Thank you. I may take it up with the mayor. Any other questions? Thanks for being with us, Andy. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, so we are on to item 8, to review and approve Social Justice and Community Connections Coordinator job description. I think before we jump into the job description, can you give us a little bit of history of how we got here? Am I putting you on the spot too much?
Yes, but but that's fine. I think that there's not a lot of history on it, but for me, anyway, having just been here since the end of August, but I think what we are finding the need for is someone who comes with the ability to continue and monitor and support the work that's happening through the equity lens. I don't necessarily, we haven't titled this a coach, but I almost liken it to our instructional coaches, the ability to be on the ground and support people in the immediacy, help with advisories for our students, help to do some workshops for students and staff and families, also to be a link to some of the community agencies. Greenfield, from my limited time here, has a very rich base of community agencies and resources, and it would be wonderful to have someone who could help our students access some of those needed resources, and be a link to families, be able to do some home visits if that was needed, to get our students feeling comfortable as much as possible in the schools. So that was some of the problem solving that, Karen and I did primarily, but really talking about the embedded ongoing support. We have Dr. Alvarez Ortiz, who's doing the professional development about trauma, and she will be here. And then we have CES, who's coming in, but they're not going to be on the ground every day in the immediacy of helping our staff and students address the issues. And we feel, I'll speak for you. We feel that ongoing embedded support is really how we're going to move things and help people have the resources to change practice. It's very hard to do that when you have a one and done PD, or you get support every 6 months. So that's really what the goal is to make this an ongoing, living, breathing resource for all of us in the school community.
Thank you. So what I'd like to do is get a motion, and then we can further discuss. How about a motion to approve the Social Justice and Community Connections Coordinator job description as presented?
So moved.
That was Secretary Ekstrom, and a second.
Second. Beat you to it.
Member Martini with the second. And let's discuss. You should have does everyone have the job description in their packet? Okay. Member Johnson-Musad, go ahead.
This is a great job description, and I'm excited about this work getting to happen and be organized in this way. One of the things I really like about the way you've written the qualifications is it doesn't include formal education requirement like a BA. That is a best practice in terms of trying to attract qualified, diverse applicants. I guess there are two changes I would suggest to improve it even further in that regard. One is to include some kind of sentence about, because a lot of times it's kind of an assumption among white people that if you don't, especially white men, that if you don't have all the qualifications, you still apply and you kind of make your best shot. And I've seen the State Department of Public Health starting to include a sentence which just kind of gives people more permission to make an application even if you don't have everything on the list. So I would encourage adding a sentence like that. And then similarly, it's been found to be a best practice to actually include a salary item, like a specific salary number, because again, white people kind of come in and go, okay, like, we'll figure it out. But many times people of color come in and they just kind of accept the first number that's given them, and it just helps for transparency just to have a number or at least a range included in the posting. So I guess I could phrase that as a friendly amendment. I'm not sure exactly how to go about suggesting those changes.
So, sorry. Member Johnson-Musad, let me just make sure that we have an accurate reflection of the changes you're suggesting.
Sure,
So-
I can summarize them like
Oh,
more
please.
succinctly. Okay. So include a sentence with the posting encouraging people to apply even if they don't have every item on the qualifications list. Include a specific salary or salary range. Was there one more thing? That was it? Okay.
Did you mention bachelor's degree or some sort of
Oh,
credential?
it was an appreciation of it as written, that it doesn't require a particular degree. So, yeah, I think
You
those
were
are the two
appreciating
changes.
that it did not.
Yeah, so that doesn't require an amendment.
It's so funny. That's what I thought you were saying at first, and then I was doubting myself. Okay, so thank you for clarifying that.
Yep.
Okay, and you have what you would need with that? Okay. Other suggestions, questions, comments?
Well, just wondering, is that accepted as a friendly amendment to the motion that I think Susan made?
Yeah, that's fine with me, and
And
That's fine with me.
Member Martini, you were the second. You good with all that?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on.
so my only question, I guess, is and I absolutely hear what you're saying about the salary range piece. Is that standard practice with something like this? I don't write postings for educators, so.
We have been doing things in a variety of ways, so I'm perfectly happy to post a salary range. It has happened here, so until we finalize what I would like our process to be, I'm very open to, I have no reason to doubt that that is a good way to go about encouraging a variety of applicants, so happy to include that.
I'd like to mention, if I might,
Please, go ahead.
this isn't something that the superintendent necessarily, not even necessarily, this isn't anything the superintendent needed to bring to us or is required to bring to us. I want to say thank you for that and bringing these things to us so that we're involved in how it is that you're billing the staff in the school district. I think that's really helpful for all of us to know and also for the community to know. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Other questions or comments? Member Martini, you look like you're ready to go. Go
I
ahead.
just wondered, is this expected to be a full-time position?
It's expected to be a full school year, school day position. Also a good ad. I read it so many times and I knew exactly what I meant, so nice catch.
Other questions? Member Deneve, go ahead.
I'm so glad that this is happening, and I just had one, just for my own curiosity. Since this is a one person for the whole district, that seems like something that could easily get stretched thin. Do you have in your mind at all that if this works well, that it could be something that could be expanded upon in the future? Or do you feel that just one person will be able to deal with this district-wide?
Right now, I'm not even confident that we won't amend the job description. I think that we have an idea of where we'd like the focus to be for this work, and then as we go through more next year, I think really will be a more reliable year to gauge the work on. I think that there are a number of positions that we have added or are added in the new budget that we really need to look at in terms of continuing the salary. They're grant funded, as is this. So it's going to be a multi-year process between my budget recommendations and your adoption of how we move the funds and which positions ultimately get adopted full-time into the budget. So I am very open to assessing what the needs are and the use, and we may reallocate some of this as we go, but right now this felt like a good match for what we're hearing is needed, so.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Other questions or comments? Member Martini, go
I
ahead.
might have missed this, I'm sorry, but what grant funds exactly is this coming from?
At this point, it's ESER 3. And we did that because it has the furthest out end date, which gives us the most opportunity with the grant funding. So,
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we can move to a vote. Do I have any abstentions? Any no votes? So it looks like that passes unanimously. And again, thank you for bringing it to us for our feedback. We appreciate it. All right. Please hold while I find my agenda. Okay. We are on to the school year calendar, review and approve for 2022, 2023. Should be in your packets. It looks like this for those following along at home. And again, we will start with a motion and then move to discussion. I would entertain a motion to approve the 2022-2023 school year calendar for the Greenfield Public Schools as presented.
So moved.
That was Vice Chair Wall, and a second?
Second, Johnson
Second
Musad.
from Member Johnson Musad, thank you. And discussion. First thing I have to do is check when that pesky professional development in January is, because that one always gets me. All right. Yes, I prefer it the Friday after Martin Luther King holiday rather than adjacent to, as I've publicly stated previously.
Well, we continued. I will tell you, this is in general a mirror of the current school year.
So, I'm sorry, may I speak?
Please,
So I'll ask this question and
here we go.
whatever. So we've been discussing now and again of changing of the times that school would start and end. I'm only asking because if that were the case, and it did change, would we have to revisit this calendar? And I want the answer to be no, but
So the answer is no, because the days are indicated.
Fine.
However, I would just like to share that changing, any prospect of changing times, especially when you're looking at a secondary level, is a very big discussion.
Absolutely, and I wanted to
So-
make sure that this did not have to be part of that discussion.
I don't see where it would.
The only district we are aware of anywhere remotely near us that's done anything like this is Northampton, unless someone's aware of another one. And they made the decision to make the change, and they pushed it out at least 2 calendar years, and it might have been 3 before they actually did it. And then the other thing related to that discussion is we all, over the course of the past couple of years, I think, have agreed that any changes like that, again, would go through, a social justice and equity assessment prior to making any change like that. So we were going to, once we have our enrollment projections and perhaps our facility inventory, roll all of that discussion into a larger discussion around the composition of the district's facilities and all of that.
You know me, I can't not talk about the stuff that people want to avoid.
Well, and I'm also conscious that when I first came onto school committee in 2020, if Melissa Rotkowitz, one of our very active parents, is listening at home, I did promise her we would address the break weeks and all of her thoughts around that. So we will perhaps look at the 2 break weeks as well. No. Related to the whole composition of the district discussion,
I'm quite certain she's paying attention.
I'm sure. Member Johnson Musad, go ahead.
Can you explain a little bit the end of the school year? It says last day of school including 5 snow days, but what happens if we don't have 5 snow days?
Then we get out earlier.
Okay, so it's really interesting with Juneteenth there. It's, so it could potentially be that our last day would be the 20th, so we would have like a day off and then come back for one final day.
It is possible.
And it almost actually happened this past year.
Right, yeah.
Yep. We actually would have had to extend the school year to accommodate Juneteenth, which we didn't think anyone was really going to be interested in doing. So moving forward, I think, so sorry. Doing forward, I think we would have to look at that with our partners in the union, the teachers union.
Thank you.
My greatest hope is that we have no snow days next calendar year, and our last day is the 14th. But we'll see. We'll see how that works out.
One can dream. Other questions or comments before we vote on the academic calendar? I'm not hearing any. Yes, go ahead.
Very quickly, so this calendar, when you look at this as a reflection of last year, but you've also worked with the teachers union, and you guys have looked at it together just to give people information about what happens.
Yes, the teachers' union does receive it, and they have the opportunity to provide input. We also looked at all of the collective bargaining agreements to make sure that time around the winter break in December is falling in line with any requirements we have for collective bargaining and paid holidays and things. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Anything else? I'm not seeing anything. Okay, so we're voting on the, approving the calendar for 22, 23. Any no votes? Any abstentions? That again passes unanimously. Thank you, guys. Okay, and now we're on to item 10, the superintendent's evaluation. And we are not doing the entire evaluation tonight. The evaluation process is actually outlined by the state for us, and it is not exactly broken into manageable parts by them, but we've kind of figured out a couple of ways to break it into manageable parts. And the part that we are planning to tackle tonight, we're going to do our best, is the superintendent's proposed goals. There is a sheet in the packets that looks like this. It should also be posted for folks at home. And what this part of the process is for the evaluation is 3 categories of goals put forth by the superintendent for us as a school committee to agree on with the superintendent that will be the goals. And they're in 3 categories: a student learning goal, 1, a professional practice goal, that's also 1, and then up to 4 or 2 to 4, I forget how it's phrased, district improvement goals. And those are outlined here. And I think we should probably, again, start with a motion and then have discussion that will include changes, wordsmithing, although I try never to use the word wordsmithing, I just did. And Susan Farber has this as a manageable copy that she can edit, so hopefully that will work pretty smoothly. So how about a motion to, how do we want to phrase this? A motion to approve the superintendent evaluation, superintendent's goals. Is that enough? Is that good? Let's see, did I?
Well, my only question is this isn't all encompassing of what all of those goals are. This is,
Oh, hang on.
if you say goals, it's generic.
I put something in my brain ahead of time. Okay. A motion to accept the student learning, professional practice, and district improvement goals proposed by the superintendent as part of the superintendent evaluation process.
So moved.
That's Member Johnson-Musada in a second.
Second.
Who was that? Was that Member Deneve?
It was.
Was that your first second? Good job.
Well done.
Good job.
Good job.
All
You
right.
did.
Okay, and so we have the goals. And again, those are the categories that are required. And we'll go from here. Who has questions or comments? Did you want to add anything? Please, I'm sorry. Stealing
So-
everybody's thunder.
No, that's all right. What I wanted to explain is that once these are agreed upon between the committee and myself to go forward, I will provide the additional components that are needed, which would be interim steps that would need to be taken. So when we look at, for example, the student learning goal, that there would be an assessment. Basically, this would be a year of assessing the academic and social emotional programming. So I would provide some additional, more specific steps under that so that we would be able to speak to deliverables, so that you would see at the end of the year, we have this, we have this, we have this. So there would be much more provided, but it seemed like it would be somewhat fruitless labor to go through all of that until we have agreed on what this will look like. So that's why I figured.
Manageable chunks.
Yes.
Yeah.
We would do one bite of the elephant at a time. And and then go from there with the next step. So the student learning goal is really to conduct an assessment of all of our student-related curriculum instruction and assessment related to social, emotional, and academic. Then professional practice related to my participation, that's around my own growth. And so participating in all of the professional development that's currently happening, especially because CES and Dr. Alvarez-Ortiz are doing specific work with the administrative team. So it's not just me sitting in the auditorium, but we are doing specific work at the leadership level with both groups. And then a few pieces that, one of them I referenced earlier in, this is how we've been doing things in a variety of ways, that I would want to establish process and protocol for matters related to our personnel, human resource, tracking certifications, the postings, people's tracking of sick time, very much the management of the internal systems. To work with our administrators around problem solving with families, so helping to establish systems for individual student level feedback and engaging families in that collaboration. And then creating a budget that represents equitable services and resources to meet what we identify are all of the needs for our students. Obviously, that is based on the financial constraints that I have and that you have in creating the budget. So, so that was certainly not all that I could have created goals around, but these clearly have large impact, and felt that it was a good first step for a first year in a year that is something.
Sure is something. Okay, so let's start with questions, comments, other feedback about the goals. I saw Member Johnson-Musad first, and then Member Ekstrom. Go ahead.
For the personnel-related matters, establishing the consistent process, so would, I guess when you're fleshing that out, would that include working with our bargaining units on those, or how do the bargaining units play into those personnel-related processes?
In some cases, there would need to be conversations about, for example, utilizing some online programs for tracking. So if there are needs to engage them, I would do that. And then certainly if there's anything that would be bargainable, that would be brought to the committee level. But a lot of this is really internal organization structures and protocols to help streamline and better track.
Just in general, just speaking to that in general, related to some of the transitions in leadership that the district has had over the past 3 years, we found that there's surprising gaps in some of the internal procedures we have, totally unrelated to anything that's in a bargaining contract, but just general procedures within human resources for handling basic personnel matters.
Right, like a bargaining-related one is that part of their contract is some of the bargaining units have like the sick leave bank, and there isn't a system in place for, that's an example of that.
Could be, yes.
But there may be other processes as well, but I guess in general, if they're personnel-related matters, then getting feedback from the personnel about how to set things up in the most effective way, I mean, engaging as partners and so on.
Sometimes the personnel involved in these processes are just central office. Some of this is even Lauren and I.
Right.
So it's a very broad look at all of that. It's not, when I say personnel, it's not necessarily union-based or driven.
Right, but I guess any piece that touches the personnel has an impact on them, and I'm just saying, I'm sure you do this anyway, but to the extent it makes sense to engage the personnel and be getting feedback from them on
If it's a procedure that would touch on them, yes,
touch
we
on
would
them
get
and that you
feedback.
could benefit from their perspective, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But not, but I'm hearing you say not all of them are, so
Correct,
that makes
yep.
sense, yeah.
But yes, that would be a piece, and that certainly could be one of the action steps under that, to talk about, communicating with collective bargaining as needed.
Yeah, I would like to see that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Secretary Ekstrom, I believe you were next. Go ahead.
So, as I always do, I like to do a little educating on how this comes to be. If anyone playing along is kind of like, why would the superintendent show up with goals that they think we should evaluate or reflect upon? That is typical process. And if anyone who's looking closely or had been paying attention to, not paying attention, was attentive to, when we were doing a search for new superintendent, all of the things that are included here are directly related to the questions that we asked any of the applicants and the things that we looked for. And so I'm quite certain that the superintendent came up with many of these goals based on that, but also based upon things that she's been already doing within the district and where we've all seen improvements need to be made.
Sure.
Okay, thank you for that. Other questions, feedback, comments?
I guess just to add to the educational moment for the good of the public. So it is true that in general, the school committee doesn't discuss personnel matters in open session, except in the case of the superintendent who gets to be evaluated publicly. And all of our feedback for her in this process is public and part of the public record. So part of the exciting opportunity of being a superintendent.
We are living the excitement, aren't we? Yes, Member Deneve, go ahead.
I assume that this will be one of the action steps, so I might be a little bit of a broken record here, but I see most everything, especially under the, professional practice to improve the experiences of students and families in our district. Does that, can that, some version of that also be under district improvement goals? Like, for example, in the listening sessions the other day, it was really consistent with the parents and with the public that there needs to be a consistent way for the district and the administrators to communicate with the parents and to bring the parents and the families in across the board. And I'm just curious if that's something that you have in your action steps, because it's not listed.
So in identifying goals, these do not encompass all of my work.
Right.
These are the areas focused on for evaluation. So communication will continue. It just isn't necessarily one of the goals that I propose specifically.
Okay.
So but to explain that again, the superintendent's rubric is very lengthy and broken up into multiple subsets. And one of those is communication, but that's just not one of the finite goals that I picked for this year, given the remainder of the work that needs to be done. So, but communication work obviously will continue.
I'm sure that's one of the elephant bites we'll be
It is.
chewing upon.
Member Deneve, are you all set? Okay. Anyone else? Questions, comments? I just have one thing that's bugging me. Provide support to administrators in improving administrative problem solving. I want one of the admin pieces to be changed.
What if I said provide support to district and building leaders?
Perfect. Thank you.
We don't want a grammar issue to hold up the
It
train.
was just bugging me. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I missed that change, yeah.
Provide the last item, the last district improvement goal, provide support to, and the changes, district and building leaders in improving administrative problem solving with families to address individual student needs. Thank you for humoring me. Any other feedback, questions?
Could you give an example of challenge that some have had with administrative problem solving, and what the support might look like to change that?
I'm trying to think of an example that I could give that might not be too identifiable. What I can say in a bigger picture is that when I look at the superintendent's rubric, after this year of evaluation, I'll say, and a lot of process and procedure, generally, the work at the superintendent's level is really connected to my leadership and support of the other administrators in the district. So in working with, part of my assessment of the academic and social emotional resources in the district also comes through doing problem solving with building level administrators about challenging situations that come up about a variety of issues. And so I work with them, who then in turn are the primary communicators with families. So it's really that process of problem solving, even uncovering unique situations that come up for our families that we need to have more than one brain on. That's one type of situation. I don't want to be too specific, but does that help? Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I'm just thinking about, like, especially students with disabilities, having a student who who is blind coming into a building, all of a sudden there's all types of things that have to be changed about the building environment. Stuff like that that's probably an extreme example, but stuff like that comes up all the time, where you have to kind of problem solve what's the legal liability, what do the parents need, what's the students need, all of that kind of comes together.
That was probably a better example than what I gave.
We live it.
Well,
My family lives it.
so.
Other feedback? So it sounds like we're ready to vote on these. Okay, so we are voting on the superintendent's proposed overarching goals for their evaluation. And we have made a couple of friendly amendments to that. Are we prepared to vote? It looks, everyone's like, yeah, just do it. Any abstentions? Any no votes? Wonderful. We've completed the first step in the superintendent evaluation process.
Thank you.
Everybody pat yourself on the,
I will have the next step
for the next meeting. So these nice little manageable chunks, I like this. Thank you. Thank you all. And all right, strategic planning. We had tried to tackle this. This is item number 11. When we first, actually when Superintendent DeBarge first started with us, we tried to tackle this. And it proved to be a little bit bigger than we thought it might be. And we'd like to have an additional discussion, and hopefully my proposed motion will set us on the right track for that discussion. And I would like someone to move that the school committee authorize the superintendent and the business manager to initiate a request for proposals process for selecting a firm to assist with the development of a school committee strategic plan.
So moved.
That was Secretary Ekstrom, and a second.
Second.
And that was Vice Chair Wall. And let's have some discussion. So it's going to cost more than we have to, based on the estimated cost, we have to do a request for proposals is the piece I can add to this. And it's something we're very interested in doing. I think from my perspective, it really puts us on a much more even playing field with the superintendent and her team and their expertise, their educational expertise. We will have strategies, priorities, and goals that are outlined based on all of our stakeholders being able to give us feedback and helping us to understand where the community wants the district to go, as well as what the capabilities are of our management team, and I think it just really helps us to figure out how to be a district of excellence, is how I would put it. And I'll shut up and let others discuss. Yes, Member Johnson-Musad, go ahead.
I feel like I'm hogging the mic tonight. Thanks for this. I guess one question I have, well, and for the public, our current business manager, Andy, is here as part of a consultancy. And so your consultancy could conceivably be someone, I mean, was kind of put forward as a possible person to help with the strategic planning process. So what would it look like if you were involved in putting out the bid, but also might be responding to the bid, or would that create a conflict? Is that a possible outcome?
Yes. Funny, I was thinking the same thing when I heard the motion. But all kidding aside, what it would be is like my role in this process would be the legal procurement requirements being met, the advertising, that level of things. I would not be involved in writing the scope of services that you would be looking for. It would strictly be making sure that all the procurement requirements were being met.
I wonder if, just to avoid even the appearance of a conflict, if it might make sense to access an additional external consultant to work with you on that part. Because I know that originally Andy and his team were your preferred consultant. So I just feel like it might, I don't know what's involved in that, but I know there are other people who can help with those processes. I wonder if that is a possibility.
Well, the city has the ability to assist us.
So maybe asking the superintendent to work with the city on it.
When we've had a conflict before, the
versus
city has been the
business.
one to manage the process.
Yeah, so maybe it's a friendly amendment to the motion that the superintendent work with the city on the procurement process.
The superintendent initiate a request for proposals and make that decision down the line. I'm fine with that.
Yep, that's fine.
I would like that too. Just for the,
Andy didn't want to be in there, but I didn't know that.
all kidding aside, I don't want anything to even appear to be any sort of conflict of interest or any potential impropriety. So to remove
And I
us
honestly
potential-
forgot about Andy works for TMS. Andy is TMS. I just, businessman,
No, but
because
it-
that would be the normal course as the superintendent and the business manager would do it. It wasn't
not
wasn't
saying that
meant
I
to
would
be
even
sneaky.
submit a proposal.
Yeah.
No, I didn't think so.
But yeah, we can take the business manager piece out. So it would say, I move that the school committee authorize the superintendent to initiate a request for proposals process for selecting a firm to assist with the development of a school committee strategic plan. Further discussion. Thank you for that.
Okay by me?
What's that?
So moved by me, the
Oh,
revised
that's right.
version.
I'm sorry. Friendly amendment. Yeah, it's getting late, guys. You know how I am when it all deteriorates at the end of the night. Any other additional?
Member Wall, do you second that friendly amendment?
Okay, so we're good on the friendly amendment? I'm not seeing anyone else even interested in commenting, so. Please. Go ahead, please. Member Denise.
I remember sitting in the school committee meeting, I think in November, December, I don't know, something. And they were, I remember, Glenn, you brought up that we wanted to make sure, you felt that it should be made sure of that local businesses in the area would also be able to bid.
Bids are wide open. Anybody
okay.
can bid.
Okay, I just,
Oh, yeah, bids are always wide, they have to be. It's required by the
I
state.
understand.
Yeah.
I just know that
Thank
there was
you.
some talk about it, some like say the words, you know.
Turn your mic on.
That's the purpose of a request for proposals, is that it has to be publicly advertised in anybody, anywhere, even in Hawaii, can apply to be. Okay.
Vice Chair Wells going to be calling people in Louisiana to bid on this. There we go. All right, so let's move to a vote on this. I'm not hearing anything else. No one's looking at me like they're dying to speak. Okay, any abstentions? Any no votes? So that also passes unanimously. Thank you all. And, wait, I would like, number 12, the city charter changes. As you've noticed, the mayor was not able to be with us tonight, and she has asked that we table the discussion of the proposed city charter changes to a future meeting. Can I get a motion to table that discussion? Anyone? Y'all want
So
that?
move.
In a second. I'll second it, okay. We're going to move it to when the mayor really needs to be here for that discussion, so we're going to move that. Okay, well, wait, let's
We have
vote.
to discuss and vote on it.
Yeah, let's go ahead and discuss. You look like you're dying to discuss.
Well, I
Member
just-
Johnson Musad.
Just a question about the timeline and when the vote is happening, will our discussion,
Well, I'll tell you. Wait, let him finish. Go ahead.
will our discussion be able to have an impact on I mean, she vetoed
They
it.
already left us out of the process entirely,
I was
so I don't
aware
know
of that.
why we need to worry. As I stated for Mary Byrne for the article in the paper, the charter is a dynamic document that we can choose to change at any time. We do not have to wait 10 years to change it. They chose to leave the school committee out of the entire process. And the larger piece is, the piece that the mayor vetoed, that there was the article about, she now disagrees with what the city council has voted. So the change will not happen because they have to be in agreement for the legislature to approve the change to the charter. So it's a moot point anyway.
I am utterly confused, but it sounds like it's moot, but I guess,
is
but
all
it's
moot.
also open.
It is all moot, but I do know the mayor feels strongly that we should have the discussion. Specifically, the discussion relates to, there was a change presented by the Charter Review Commission to prevent the mayor from serving as chair of the school committee. And that is what the mayor vetoed, but they did not make a change to a second part of the charter that says the mayor has all the same rights and privileges as all other members of the school committee. So those two things are in conflict, plus the city council and the mayor are in conflict, so that it will not move forward from here.
I'm glad that the mayor wants us to talk about it after she has vetoed it. That's,
Well,
but
I
any
mean,
chance
that,
to discuss it is great.
let me say again, we were left out of the entire charter review process as an entire school committee. So the fact that the mayor vetoed something we were never included in, who cares? Who cares? They left us out for years on this process. So it is what it is at this point.
I mean, I guess in their favor, probably all the meetings were posted and we could have been engaged and gone, but we didn't get a heads up or something.
Do you want to have this conversation right now? Because we can.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're
So,
actually, just to
Member
remind us,
Johnson-
we're on a vote about whether or not to table this.
Member Johnson, we saw you were on the school committee. Were you ever invited to participate in the Charter Review Commission?
I was not.
Did you attend any of the meetings?
No, I have to admit, I knew they were happening though, and I wish I had gone.
Okay. I think we have
Yes.
enough here to move on.
Now I really wish I had gone.
Okay, so let's move to a vote to table the rest of this discussion. Any abstentions? Any no votes? We are tabling the city charter changes discussion. All right, and we do have a new item on here. Item 13 is new business. It's an opportunity to have school committee members ask for things that they would like to have identified as new business topics for future meetings.
New business
What did I
is to
do wrong?
discuss business that has come up between when the,
When the meeting was posted and
yes.
now?
That-
Where's the other
That
part?
actually is usually described as items not reasonably anticipated to have been anticipated within 24 hours of meeting. New business actually, my understanding is an opportunity for members to make motions about items that they would like to see on future agendas.
my understanding is that that is actually another
Okay.
point.
How about for
Would be like-
today, we
It's
use
fine.
it to identify items you'd like to talk about in future meetings? How about that? Yes, Member Deneve, please.
I have several items. I'm sorry, I'm hogging the mic.
Several items, go ahead.
I had some thoughts today. So many of the members of the public come and tell us that they need more access to meetings. A lot of them can't stay for the whole meeting. It gets very late. We've all heard all these topics. So I was thinking, the superintendent's report is public, right? And the student council's report is also public, right? Perhaps there's a way that we could, since these are already written down, perhaps there's a way that they could be abridged or something and put in the recorder for people to have another way to view them. I think that that would add some transparency and more accessibility for the public, because a lot of the members of the public don't have access to social media or the internet, or they can't watch the live stream. It's really hard for parents to scroll through hours of the meeting to find salient points, but people are more likely to read an article or pick up their local newspaper. So that was a thought that I had. And then I'd also like to see if there's a possibility, using the technology that we have, to record these subcommittee meetings. They happen at really odd hours, and the public is not able to attend most often because it's like 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. And I think that that should be something that is available to people to view.
Just those two things?
Just those two things, just some little ideas.
Anyone else?
Should we vote on these items, whether to have them on the next agenda, or? I would move that we add those items to the next agenda.
I was just going to add them. Why do we have to vote?
Okay, if you want to just add
If
them.
a school
Great.
committee member feels like it's something we need to discuss,
Great,
I think we should just add it.
That's lovely.
thank you.
You could put the kindergarten registration in the recorder. It would be
It
so
already
helpful.
is in the recorder.
Oh, that's great.
It definitely already goes in the recorder, multiple times. Other items?
Oh, I had something, what was it? Maybe that was it. Recording of the minutes, the subcommittee meetings. Thank you.
All right. We do have to do an executive session. That's our last item. We will not return to open session. So I would like a motion to enter into executive session for exemption reason 3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body, and the chair does declare, I do declare. And exemption 7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant and aid requirements. That's a fancy way of saying we're going to approve minutes from an executive session. Can I get a motion?
So move.
Thank you. And a second.
Second?
A second from Member Johnson-Musad. And any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, and now that sounds like we have opened the executive session, and now we need a motion to adjourn the public session, please.
So moved.
Second.
A second, and any abstentions, any noes? We are adjourned at 7:52 p.m. Thank you all. 5 minutes for you all, and then we'll meet in the other room.
It really